Welcome to another episode of Friendly Fire, a show dedicated to Libertarian candidates. Today, Ricky Harrington Jr. is here to discuss his 2022 race for Arkansas governor. Let's get to it. Well, it's good evening here, sir, but it's good morning by the time people actually watch this. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on the show, brother.
Absolutely. And thank you for joining the show. I think this is going to come as a bit of a surprise to people because I think when we see podcasters interviewing candidates, it's usually candidates who are currently running. And what I decided to do instead was to interview those when I can, but then also bring on candidates who were previously running. So in this particular case, those who ran in 2022, and have a chat about their campaign. Because what I want to do is I want to start generating some more interest in our candidates, and I want to help start laying the groundwork for the party to support more candidates and for candidates to have maybe some idea of what's ahead of them, especially if they're a first-time candidate. So I very much appreciate it. And you are actually going to be the very first candidate on for 2023 and for this new retrospective type idea. So thanks for being my guinea pig.
All right, no problem with that. I love pathfinding.
All right. So even though the race is over, like I said, I think this allows us to lay the foundation to improve future campaigns. So I'm not really going to hold your feet to the fire because, the election is over and that's okay. But we're going to talk about we're going to specifically identify challenges and successes and just kind of have a chat about them. And it's more, so when you're thinking about the answers, think more than just, man, if I just had more money, or golly, man, I could have used a whole lot more volunteers. We want to be more specific than that. So that way, next time around, people that might be watching the show will have a good idea of where they can specifically help out a candidate, or maybe a candidate might identify a weakness before they figure it out the hard way.
Okay, let me go ahead and answer that question there.
Absolutely.
Any advice that I would give to someone who is thinking about running for office, if you have an idea that you might want to do this, you need to go ahead and write a plan down right now. For me, it was like the moment. The moment was there, and I had to take the moment. Senator Cotton said some of those words he said, and me being a prison chaplain, being inside the system there, and Arkansas having one of the worst incarceration rates in the whole nation, and him advocating for some authoritarian, policies, I heard that and just acted. But if someone right now has an idea that they even may want to run, I might want to do this, go ahead, start writing the plan down. A, B, and C, this is what you need. I'm going to run local office. You need to start building relationships automatically right now. If you have an idea that you want to run, you need to start building relationships with people in the community. Start attending meetings that they're being held in the local and the county level. Start talking to the people that are major players. Start examining all of those bills that are on the local level. Start building yourself a little, notoriety in the community. Those are one of the biggest things. And then if you start early enough, you'll be able to handle those financial or, volunteer needs that usually come up.
Nice. Awesome. And you actually wrote out a plan before you started?
Negative. No.
Oh, okay. Okay.
No, but for me, myself, it was one of those spur of the moments,
Sure.
Cotton said something. I was like, somebody got to oppose that guy.
Right. No, I hear you. And it's not a dogging. I'm asking because sometimes we get into projects or we get into ideas and we find out, man, I should have done this. I'm here now and I don't regret being here now, but there's always a learning opportunity, right? And hopefully the mistakes that we make, other people can learn from so they can come behind us and do even better, or ourselves. Do you think you'll run again?
Um, I'll may run in 2026 if Tom Cotton is seeking that seat again, but otherwise, my focus is going to be on building the party up, and with this new position that that I recently took in decentralized finance.
Okay. And what position did you take?
I took a chief operating officer for Poodle Token.
Okay. What is Poodle? I'm not familiar with that.
It started as a meme token, and I started off as an investor in that token, and
Hmm.
we were escaping a rug pull. The community was big enough; we didn't want to lose all of the value that we placed in it ourselves. Being community members of a token,
Right.
and so we escaped that from the Ethereum blockchain, moved over to the BEP20 uh, Binance Smart Chain network. And so they
Hmm.
just about airdropped all tokens to all the holders, and we migrated from Ethereum to the Binance Smart Chain.
Okay.
And so now we're working on a couple of things. Some of the things I hope to bring in is Poodle for Business. We want to make the bridge between the brick and mortar businesses in crypto. And one thing is those meme tokens that people have created out there, they are currency, they're money.
Hmm.
And my opinion of them is like sunken treasure in the ocean. It's out
Hmm.
there, but to you or me right now, is it really worth anything? It's worth
Hmm.
nothing. There could
Right.
be $2 billion worth of gold at the bottom of that ocean, but until you put in the work, you
Hmm.
get the crew, you get the finances to go out there, you get the submarines, you get all the equipment you need. And once you bring that sunken treasure up to the surface, then you have the value that you're seeking.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. That's awesome. Well, it sounds like you are going to be pretty busy. So, but for right now, let's get back to. I got a couple questions that I've got prepared. A couple
Mm.
easy ones. First one: what was the biggest logistical success of your campaign? In terms of things that happened, how things played out. What was
Mm.
the biggest success, and what do you attribute that to?
Um, I would say the biggest success I had this previous run was just the media relations and press relations. The earned media that I had this previous run was I lost count on it.
Hmm.
There was contacting reporters back and forth, and
Hmm.
the only thing that I can attribute that to is the 2020 race with Senator Cotton and getting that much percentage. And it's just the way that it was, that it was a head-to-head race with Cotton and myself,
Hmm.
and then I had that 1 hour debate with myself there, and so there's already certain amount of earned media and media relations built up from that, and then running with the governor, the race, it just seemed like it just came out of nowhere, honestly.
Right. And just I've got the information here. So you actually received 33.5% of the vote against Cotton in a two-way race. Um, and I think for me, that's a lot because when I was looking at the numbers, it does seem like Arkansas is a Republican stronghold, at least from what I was seeing.
Mm.
And it's not like one of those states where it can kind of toss up, like a purple state or whatnot, or where certain races tend to be a toss up. No, these races look like they were pretty Republican stronghold races.
Yes, and Arkansas kind of made that switch because we had a Democratic governor, and he was termed out, Mike Beebe,
Hmm.
in 2014. And kind of 2014, we had a lot of things going on inside the country and outside the country. Crimea was annexed during that time,
Hmm.
and the Tea Party movement was kind of hitting on all cylinders around that time, in my
Right.
opinion. And it kind of flipped Arkansas and made it into a Republican stronghold. But in essence, it's always been a good old boy system. If you're in the system, it doesn't matter
Gotcha.
if you're red or blue. It's just a change in teams, but the system, that good old boy system, still remains in power in the state of Arkansas.
Right. Okay. All right. And then on the flip side, what was the biggest challenge of your campaign when you're looking back?
Oh, the biggest challenges, they were definitely personal. Separated from my family. My
Hmm.
wife is active duty Navy, and I have two children on the autism spectrum. My oldest son
Hmm.
is a little bit severe, so running a statewide campaign and
Hmm.
taking care of your family on top of that,
Right.
it's not easy, and especially
Right.
not easy for third party candidates that don't have the infrastructure that the major party candidates do
Hmm.
have. But I
Right.
consider that a badge of honor to have endured the things that I endured, yet remain and still continue to build momentum.
Hmm.
If you small potatoes and you still making it through the struggles that you go through, it builds yourself up. And there's some other things that I've been thinking about. In the realm of self mastery.
Hmm.
That's one of the biggest things for human beings to do is to master self. And so, that's kind of some of the Christian things that I would talk about, in ministry.
Right. Okay. And how, and because what I want to do is really focus in when, because you're not going to be the only candidate that necessarily may have family challenges,
Oh, no,
right?
no.
And so, what do you, if you, and I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but what might have been an assist for you, like that supporters could offer? And the way I'm thinking about this is, hey, if you had to do it over again, or if somebody else who has a spouse that's going to be away or busy, where a large part of the parental duties are kind of falling on them, or at least maybe there's significant amount, like if you have a child with special needs,
Mm.
what kind of things would have went toward reducing the stress of trying to balance all of that?
Well,
And I know it'll be different for other people, but what I want to do is I want to give people that are watching an idea so that they can specifically find a way to contribute to campaigns.
mhm. Well, it just depends on who the person is.
Hmm.
There's always resources out there that can help you. Familial resources. Family did help out a
Hmm.
lot for me personally. If you have a support group, or if you have friends, a
Hmm.
church group, or a book club, let some of those people know in on your plans and what your struggle is and what you hope to achieve in running for office.
Okay.
Some of those, it's hard, it's very difficult.
Hmm.
I'm a private person, um, and don't like to bother others too much, but it seems like quite a paradox while running for office.
Hmm.
But for me, it was something necessary and had to do it. You know,
Right.
Being a missionary, you focused on accomplishing a task, and the task for me was trying to get Tom Cotton out of that seat because he's authoritarian.
Right. No, I hear you. We have our own down here.
Mm,
His name is DeSantis, and
mm,
we did run a fellow last election, and of course we didn't win, and that's okay. I think there were different reasons for us to run a particular candidate, but yeah, we feel you on the authoritarian, and they come in different seats, and different colors, red and blue. So very much appreciate the hard work and the willingness to step up and say, you know what, somebody has to do this. And I think that's probably the very first thing. And it doesn't have to always be running as a candidate. There are different
oh no,
ways to step up. In my
absolutely.
particular case, I'm not running, but I'm the chair of the Libertarian Party here in Duval, here in Jacksonville. And so that's one way that I contribute. I refuse to run as a, for a political office. That's just not my. I have no interest, and it's going to take a whole lot more than a terrible authoritarian for me to run. But I will sure as heck support people that want to run.
Mm-hmm.
And this is another way that I'm doing it. So, folks, if you're listening, it doesn't have to necessarily be a candidate. It can be somebody who's working on the candidate's team, and
Yes.
And if you're watching and you've got a friend that wants to run, and you are a close friend, like Mr. Harrington, or I guess I'll call you Ricky, as Ricky says, he said, reach out to book clubs, church groups, whatever group that you're close to. And so if you're somebody that's close to somebody who's a candidate that could probably use your assistance, because even if they don't have children, it's going to be stressful.
Yes. Whenever you're a candidate, you're making fundraising calls, or you're doing the usual business. You you have to kind of realize that you're giving a part of yourself, and the people do recognize that. They recognize that when you're running. They may not agree with you, they may not vote for you, but they know that it's hard, and they know that they wouldn't want to do it either.
Right.
Um,
Right.
So there's a lot of things that can chase people off from running, and there's also ways that you can still be engaged, still be affecting positive change in your community, because that's the ultimate goal.
Mm-hmm.
Is we want to have positive change, and some people might have a different opinion on what positive change might be. So
Mm-hmm.
okay, we have different opinion. Let's try to come up with some consensus of what positive change might be,
Right.
without us getting to that point to where we want to start committing acts of violence against one another.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Okay. So I watched your PBS debate with Sarah Huckabee Sanders and Chris Jones.
Mm.
And you're in Arkansas, so I don't really have a lot of interaction with you. We've crossed paths a couple of times on Twitter, and let's see, I don't think I've been to any conventions out there. So I don't think I've ever actually met you in person.
Mm.
You seem, as far as I can tell from the debate, and then also some of the interviews. I saw a couple of interviews that you were talking about earlier that you got on last year. You seem like a really nice guy, like really nice, like, and I've heard from others that say like, hey, you're a really good dude. You don't seem to be one that people quickly get angry with necessarily. So let me ask you, I don't think that we should get nasty in campaigns, but are you too nice for politics?
That might be the case, but I'm still going to do it.
Right.
On the governor campaign, I made it my goal not to do any type of slander or come up with the false allegations, which is the
Mm-hmm.
usual political ploy.
Right.
You come up with something. It doesn't matter if it's true or not.
Right.
Those red herrings. It's just the game.
Right.
But those games have consequences,
Mm-hmm.
because people are quite impressionable. All of us are. Depending on who's the right person talking to us. And nowadays, some folks quick to commit acts of violence.
Right.
So it was an intentional stand that I took, that while I'm going to be up there on that stage, while I'm be in front of other people, they need to see this type of leader,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and not only see it, but I'm going to be it,
Mm-hmm.
because we can't keep doing these things. If you've been in enough fights in your life,
Mm-hmm.
whenever it gets to that point where somebody's going to start swinging.
Right.
Um, working in the prison, I know when something about to pop off. I used to
Right.
work at a psychiatric hospital as a crisis prevention technician. If you got out of hand, you dealt with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so when something is about to pop off, and it's just how it is in our country right now. It's about to pop off.
Right.
So
Oh.
the good folks, you better make a stand, and maybe you can talk some sense into some other folks.
Mm-hmm.
And if you talk some sense into enough people, the fire dies down.
Right. Do you think that hurt or helped? And let me preface that a little bit. I think that we need to be very careful about just saying, oh, that hurt or helped, and that's the way it's always going to be. I think sometimes when you're introducing change, sometimes the short term is that it may not, you may have to take a few steps back before you're ready to take a few leaps forward.
Mm.
Right. And so do you think it just in terms of this one single election, do you think it hurt in the fact that people were looking for somebody tougher and they didn't get it, so they moved on to what they thought was tougher? Or do you
Mm.
think that actually resonated well, even in the short term?
Well, to be flat honest, I completely failed at my political goals this past election.
Okay.
Getting the 3% so we
Hmm.
could get ballot access. That
Right.
was the goal there. Got 1.8%. Didn't
Okay.
get that. Our lieutenant governor candidate, he got 3%, and it's got me wondering, well, maybe we should have ran with Mr. Gilbert, and he's also my mentor. He mentored me in the party here in Arkansas. I worked on his campaign. We
Hmm.
worked together with one other on a lot of things.
Right.
There's a lot of things that I haven't extrapolated the data
Hmm.
to see why I failed at those goals there. But people might see a nice guy, but aren't you? Should you worry about those nice people? We're supposed to be peaceful. Let's be peaceful as much as we can, so
Right.
we don't get to that point. When I worked in the prisons there, in the policy, they hammered into us about being respectful, even to inmates, because
Hmm.
that prison is a powder keg. It just takes a spark. I done
Right.
seen riots in there. You know what I mean? So if people want, a politician that's spewing nasty stuff, you get what you get what you want. If that's what they
Right.
want, then that's fine. But um, there has been great opportunity in spite of losing that election, especially when it comes to building bridges in Arkansas and working with people across the party lines and
Hmm.
building things that are going to benefit Arkansans. So for me, the number one big victory takeaway was the credibility and the repertoire, excuse me, rapport
Hmm.
built with the Arkansas electorate. It
Gotcha.
may not have came out in the polls because some people just not willing to take that big leap yet. So
Right.
I'm trying to build more upon the foundations that I laid when it comes to politics.
Got it. Okay. Um, are there any are there any moments where you look back and you say, I didn't need to be nasty, but maybe I could have punched a little bit harder? Maybe I could have been a little bit more vocal about this.
Oh yes, that debate with Miss Huckabee Sanders and Dr. Jones, I replay that thing over and over.
Hmm.
Maybe even I don't know how many times a week on how I could have done things different or said some things different.
Hmm.
And I wish I did push, a little bit hard on both the candidates on
Hmm.
some of the policy issues, but it's hard to do it in a minute and 30
Right.
seconds, and
Right.
it's even harder to do it whenever you have a 30-second rebuttal.
Right.
So I think I did my best. I did the best I could up there. Whenever you look back, there's going to be things you always want to change.
Always.
But as long as you do not let it drag you down a dark abyss,
Right.
entertain those ideas.
Yeah. 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 There's an interesting saying that I learned in Toastmasters, and that is, there is the speech that you prepared for, there's the speech that you gave, and there's the speech that you wish you gave.
Yeah.
It comes from oh, I'm drawing a blank from the gentleman now. I'm drawing a blank on the man's name. If I said it, you'd know it. I'm drawing a blank at the moment. But very famous person. He wrote about it and he said, whenever you give a speech, there's always actually three speeches. And those
Mm,
are the three speeches, the one that you prepared for, the one you gave, and the one you wish you had gave. And I found that to be so true. I'll prepare sometimes for a speech and I give it. And I've learned to become more comfortable with where I feel like I made a mistake.
mm,
But most of the time I look back and I say, I probably could have used this word or could have said this, or, something about the speech stands out where I feel like maybe it would have resonated better,
mm,
had I done it differently. But I think you're right. You should not allow yourself to get down in that abyss. And it's always good to kind of learn to be comfortable and just say, okay, well, I didn't do so well then. And it's an opportunity that for the next time, here's my plan, and here's what I'm going to keep in mind. And that's how we get better.
Mm. If you don't mind, I'd like to talk about a hot topic.
Sure, absolutely. We got a few
and it
minutes.
and it directly deals with that debate.
Mm-hmm.
When they brought up the topic of the gender affirming surgeries for
Mm-hmm.
children, I just can't. First off, I can't believe that we're at a point like that, which is one reason why I said it should have died in committee. And
Right.
my main point was, one of the first things I said are my children, or they belong to the government.
Right.
That's the main thing right there. And I wish I had the time to say that, what happens whenever the other side gets power and they want to start closing down, gay conversion therapies. I might want to send my children to that.
Right.
People have families. Those families
Mm-hmm.
face difficulties,
Right.
and to politicize such things, that are that intimate
Mm-hmm.
for families to deal with, it should be between, the trusted professionals, and sometimes the trusted professionals might not even know what they're talking about.
Right.
So find people that you trust that's going to help you and your family deal with those issues. The government needs to stay out of it. And maybe, in those free marketplace of ideas, we can stomp out the stuff that is destructive.
Right. No, I agree. And I think that's one of the areas where it's really challenging for libertarians, because Huckabee's answer was, I want to protect children. And that's kind of like a default.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and who doesn't want to protect? Everybody wants to protect children, right? Nobody wants to see a child be harmed, whether
Yes.
it's by a regular individual just being intentionally harmful, or whether there's a doctor doing something that someone else sees is harmful, or somewhere in between, right? Like you mentioned, the therapy that you mentioned a moment ago.
Oh yeah,
Goodness
the
gracious.
gay conversion
Yeah,
therapy.
the conversion therapy. There's always going to be something that somebody else disagrees with and wants to protect children from. And I think we should have that debate about, because I think there is a time and a place. I personally, you may disagree, and that's fine. I think there is a time and a place. If somebody's literally physically punching a child, I
Mm-hmm.
think it's time for intervention, right? Let's take a
Yeah.
drastic example that pretty much most everybody's going to agree on, right? But then you start getting into, okay, well, this parent is taking their child for a particular medical treatment that I disagree with. Well, that's when it starts getting a bit tricky. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't really like I'm doing it for the children, because it's very lazy, and and it allows us to be lazy and not actually maybe hash it out and determine, maybe this is maybe a given topic is something that people need to just simply let be. And maybe it's a topic that, yes, we do need some intervention,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I think that we need to hash it out with something better than it's for the children,
Yeah.
because everything is for the children these days, right? And I don't think that's a good enough answer necessarily.
I mean, people are quick to give opinions and open their mouth, but they're slow to give a hand. They're
Yes.
slow to give a helping hand. And people should really give the helping hand first,
Mm-hmm.
and then open your mouth. It's something that they taught us whenever, I was training as a missionary apprentice. People are not going to want to hear anything you say about the gospel until you open your hand, help them
Mm-hmm.
out, and show that you care about them.
Right.
And it
Well,
should be, go ahead,
go
brother.
ahead. I was gonna add on to that. Now, I am no longer in religious circles, but I used to be an evangelical, and I worked as a youth director. When I'm in my 40s now. I did this when I was in my 20s,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember when I was youth director, my ex-wife and I would work with teens. She would work with junior high age. I would work with senior high age. And the kids that we worked with were kids that came from rough backgrounds. They didn't have a lot of money. Some of them were extremely poor. Some of these kids, especially the ones in the high school age, were constantly in trouble. Right.
Mm.
So this is the kind of, these weren't kids that were coming from nice, happy, hunky dory homes where the biggest challenge was the girl was trying to sneak out with something slightly inappropriate on, right? Like these kids were often getting into real trouble that sometimes involved like police and stuff like that. And they often had, maybe no food in the home, right? So these were very serious circumstances. And um, the one of the things that really stands out to me is I had a lot of trouble. My ex-wife and I had a lot of trouble getting volunteers. Like it seemed like nobody wanted to help. Everybody just wanted the kids to behave and do the right thing, but nobody wanted to help work with them and help guide them and bring them there. So scroll forward a number of years, like 10 years or something like that, right? I
Mm.
had moved out of that city, even out of the state, and I was just, I'm no longer married. And my mom had sent me an article. One of the kids that had that we had worked with had grown up, had a girlfriend, had a baby, and the baby died of malnutrition. Very horrid story. Now, I believe that him and her are still responsible for their behavior. But what made me angry was when she sent me the story, I was reading the comments, and there were a lot of people that were just outraged, and they couldn't believe that this thing happened, and not in our town kind of attitude. And I went to write a letter in. By the time I got wind of it and saw all these comments, the local newspaper had cut off any additional editorials and comments, right? And any opinions. So they were no longer accepting them. But I was going to say, like, I was there when this young man was in his early days,
Mm-hmm.
and none of y'all were around. You weren't there when it mattered to maybe head off a future disaster.
Mm.
I was alone with my wife, right? And maybe a couple of other people that were helping out when we could. And I feel like some of these social issues that we're dealing with today kind of follow a similar trajectory. Not always, but the question I have is like, where are people early on before something becomes a big, huge deal? Are they helping out their neighbor? Are they, if you don't like how people are raising their kids, rather than just pointing the finger, where are you in maybe mentoring people and helping them become, a better parent when their child is younger, so that you're not stuck, so that you don't feel like, hey, when they get older and that now the kid wants to do something that I don't like, I need to pass a bill.
Yeah.
Right. Sorry, it was a long way around that. And, and I didn't know a better way to do it, but I think that's kind of similar to what that kind of taps on to what you were saying. Like a lot of people just like to show up and then they shove a bill out and they're like, this is going to solve the problem. And I'm like, not really, because the problem is probably way more than just a bill.
Yes, it is far more than that.
So, I get very frustrated when I see these kind of things, because I remember when I was struggling to get help and people didn't want to help, and I remember some people just actively were like, no, I'm not interested in helping. These kids should figure it out. And then later they want to point the finger, or later they want to pass a bill, and and I just think that I think you agree, passing
Mm.
bills is very reflexive, and it usually adds more problems, either without solving the problem or at least long before solving it.
I'm going to be a little facetious and sardonic with
Sure.
this. Whenever you have some politicians, just passing just useless bills, it's kind of like, hey, Ma, look what I did, type of stuff.
Right. Oh, yeah.
They can go out and tell the, constituents, oh, yeah, he's up there doing stuff. He's getting bills passed. And that's the
Right.
only thing that they have to say. And then
Right.
boom, right back in office. I'm getting these bills passed, doing work for the people, and actually just passing your money right back up into their cronies.
Right. And yeah, and that's why even where I land on the side of, like there might be an issue where I fall on a particular side that seems like I would support a bill, I almost never support the bill, because I read the bill and I look at it and I say, no, there's a lot of problems with this bill. There's a lot of unintended consequences that I foresee. There are things that are missing out of this bill. There's unclarity. There are things that are unclear. So I don't even know how this bill should properly be applied. And so I think out of like 20 some bill reviews that I've done, I've supported two. And one of them was to end qualified immunity. And I believe the other one was to end the Department of Education. So we're not even actually doing anything. We're actually undoing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well,
but all the other bills, I'm like, even if I agree, I'm like, nope, this is a terrible bill. It's trash.
there's a lot of them that are just trash. I mean,
Right.
really, there are a lot of them that are just trash. Right now in Arkansas, the legislative session just started,
Mm-hmm.
and they're passing a lot of these culture war bills at the
Right.
moment. It's a lot of drumming up the frenzy,
Mm-hmm.
and not really dealing with just the practical issues of governance.
Right.
I'm gonna go ahead and put this out there. You
All
know,
right.
regardless of what we do, if the libertarians ever got a chance to do what we hope to do, abolish the Fed, there's still going to be some form of organizational structures.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now we hope those organizational structures are putting forth liberty. It makes me think of a discussion I had at a university. I went to Arkansas Tech University,
Mm-hmm.
and there were some students came, and this one young brother, he's a young black brother. We went back and forth for a while, and he was just
Mm-hmm.
trying to wrap his mind around libertarianism, and how he was arguing that libertarianism would in itself end up into a monarchy somehow.
Okay.
We never
Interesting.
reconciled that discussion there. I think he might have saw somebody, post something on Twitter, but I hope that he does stay in government, because we had a lot of back and forth. It wasn't heated at all, but
Mm-hmm.
it was a little bit more debate action.
Hey, us libertarians can handle it, right?
I don't mean to be a contrarian or anything like that, but I'd like for my ideas to be as polished as possible.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
If we're building something together, let's take a look at all the benefits and all the cons that might be there,
Mm-hmm.
because basically we all human beings. We on a basic level, there's certain needs that we have. We want to see, we want to live. Some of us might want to get married, some might not. It's their choice,
Right.
but we have that right as human beings to go seek out that choice.
Right.
And I hope to do just this one thing, that we truly have liberty in this country, that people are truly free,
Mm-hmm.
just like they say in that document.
Right.
That's all I want, no more, no less.
Awesome. Well, that sounds like a great ending point. We are up against the clock here. I want to thank you for joining me. It was definitely a pleasure having you on, and I look forward to seeing what future work you get involved in. So tell me how people can find you, if you want to be found, and see the work that you are currently doing.
Well, my Twitter handle is Rick D. Harrington. You
Mhm.
can find me on Twitter. My Facebook, facebook.com, RDH, the number 4, Liberty.
Okay.
Um, and you can find me there, just trying to keep working forward. I hope we all doing the same thing.